Our story begins with an employee in a company. We see him working long hours that go beyond his usual time because he is searching for a partner who will agree to the offer presented by his company. This makes him meet many clients, but unfortunately without any success. At last he finds a man who accepts the offer and signs the partnership contracts. The employee feels great joy, for he has finally achieved the goal required from him in the company. He begins to think about the reward and promotion that he will receive from his manager, and says to himself that he must invite his friends to celebrate this important event. While returning on the road, a criminal escapes from the police station after stealing a gun from a policeman and shooting him. The injured policeman chases the criminal until he brings him down to the ground in order to arrest him. At that moment, a bullet is fired from the criminal's gun and strikes the employee, who falls drowning in his blood. With broken breath, he speaks in his final moments, saying that he wished he could have enjoyed the reward he was going to receive today. Then he closes his eyes, bidding farewell to the world. But the strange thing is that he does not die. After moments, he opens his eyes and finds himself in a completely different place, where he sees a huge dragon flying in the sky. Not only that, but he also hears a voice calling him, telling him that it was written for him to receive a new chance at life. But now he has moved to a parallel world called Galdaradya. In this world, he does not only have the chance to live again, but he also possesses new gifts, such as magic that will be in his hands. The voice tells him that only his race and age were chosen, while the rest he will decide for himself. Suddenly, an electronic screen appears in front of the employee, showing information about him, that he is human, 15 years old, and has the right to choose a new name. He chooses the name Luciel. Then he selects 4 skills: magic control, mastery of appraisal, martial arts, and monster luck. He learns that these skills make his new profession that of a healer, and he says that he will use this profession to help people. While walking in the forest, he collides with the corpse of a monster. Terrified, he runs at full speed, repeating that he does not want to die again before living the life he wishes for. After some time, Luciel reaches the gate of a city inside the kingdom, and he notices that the guards check the identities of those entering and take fees from them. But he only owns 3 silver coins and has no identity card, which would cause him a great problem, so he decides to lie to the guard. When the guard asks him for his identity, he tells him that he is from a small village and works as a healer, but the people of the village found no benefit in him and expelled him. That is why he came to the city searching for a clinic where he could train, and he says that he has no identity card. The guard goes to an officer to inform him of Luciel's words, and after moments he returns accompanied by a knight named Lumina. Lumina brings him into the city, and he learns then that healers do not pay entrance fees. While he is running to catch up with her, he collides with a group of adventurers. He fears them because of their great power, and his fear grows when one of them warns him not to become a corrupt healer. But luckily Lumina sees him and saves him from them. Then they continue their way together toward the Healers Guild, where she tells him that the kingdom does not impose fees on healers because their work is essential for all its people. At last, they reach the guild, where the receptionist welcomes them. When she learns that Luciel wants to register in the guild, she gives him a paper to write his details, then hands him a card to fill with his magic power. He hesitates for a moment because he does not yet know how to use his magic, but when he concentrates well, he succeeds in filling the card with the information of his power. She takes it and registers him officially in the guild. Meanwhile, Lumina says that her role ends here, but Luciel follows her before she leaves and asks her how he can learn and use magic, since he never found any books about it in his village. She tells him that there are 3 ways to learn magic. The first is intensive training, where the student studies all books of magic and its practices every day without rest. The second is the academic way, by entering a magic academy for 3 years, but it requires fees for admission. The third is to learn magic alongside other tasks in daily life. She says that he must decide which way suits him. After thinking, Luciel chooses the intensive training because he wants to master magic as quickly as possible. He sees that this is the best choice for him, especially since he is already used to working under pressure from his previous life. From the moment Luciel chose the path of learning magic, the receptionist gave him a magic book and took him to his private room inside the guild. From that day, Luciel began reading the book of magic and studying what was written in it, and he decided to start by learning the healing spell. He trained on it through the night, but he failed to cast it correctly, and he discovered that his magical energy had decreased noticeably, so he decided to rest that day and continue his training on the next. Indeed, on the following morning, when he woke up, he found that his magical energy had returned to its normal state. He began once more to practice the healing spell, and after many attempts, he finally succeeded in casting it. At that time, the receptionist came to ask him for the rent of the room where he was staying. but when she learned that he was under Lumina's care, she told him that Lumina had already paid all his fees at the guild and ordered that he be treated well. Luciel thanked her, thinking about Lumina and how he could one day repay her kindness. He asked the receptionist if he could work with the healing spell that he had just learned. She told him that all the healers in the city worked with it, but the condition was that he must be a righteous healer and never demand high fees from the patients. So Luciel left the Healers Guild for the first time to walk through the city in search of work that suited him. There, he once again met the same group of adventurers, but before he could ask them about any clinic where he could work, everyone was surprised by a group of young adventurers returning from battle, badly wounded, so much so that normal treatment was not enough to heal them. Luciel said to himself that the time had come to prove he was a righteous healer. He reassured the injured and told them that he could help them with the healing spell without asking for any payment. He began to heal them, but on his first attempt he failed to cast the spell properly. Yet he did not give up. He tried again, and on the second attempt he succeeded, healing the wounded one by one, until his magical energy was completely drained. He collapsed and fainted before he could heal the last warrior, who was suffering from severe wounds. When Luciel awoke, he found himself back in the Healers Guild, troubled by his weakness that had prevented him from treating the last adventurer. He decided that he must join the Adventurers Guild to increase his endurance and strength, and thus strengthen his magic. The very next day, he went directly to the guild and told the receptionist, "I am a healer named Luciel, and I wish to apply to the Adventurers Guild. One of my skills is martial arts." The receptionist agreed after learning he had a combat skill, gave him a form to fill out, and handed him a magic card to enter his information. Luciel then asked her to recommend the best trainer in the guild. She told him that the strongest among them was the trainer Broad. At that moment, Broad arrived. As soon as Luciel saw him, he was terrified by the size of his body and his massive muscles, but this fear gave him even greater courage to request his training. Broad accepted and asked when he wished to begin. Luciel replied that he would start after 6 days, so he could finish mastering the healing spells he was still practicing in the Healers Guild. And so he returned and spent the 6 days training on every healing spell to strengthen his magical ability and restoration. After the 6 days had passed, he bid farewell to the receptionist of the Healers Guild and told her that he would now move to the Adventurers Guild. He went there directly, and the receptionist told him that Broad was waiting for him in the training hall. When he entered, Broad said to him, "I have emptied the hall and made it ours, so we can complete your training." The first training was to run at high speed for a long time, which left Luciel utterly exhausted, but he encouraged himself, saying that in his past life he had wished he could spend even a little time training. Now he lived a new life full of meaning. Still, even words of encouragement could not prevent him from fainting from fatigue. When he awoke, he was screaming from pain, for Broad was pressing and stretching his muscles so he could continue training. Broad said to him, "You are very weak. Your strength is limited and you need long training." Luciel replied, "That is exactly why I came here. Training in martial arts will increase my physical strength, and that will in turn strengthen my magic power so I can heal more people." Hearing this, Broad changed his training method. He made Luciel practice self-defense and asked him to attack. But every time, Luciel failed to strike him, and the round ended with his complete loss, without scoring even a single hit. Still, Broad insisted on another round until all of Luciel's strength was drained and he fell to the ground. Broad reassured him, telling him that it was natural to lose, but he must learn from every note and correction given to him. At that moment, Luciel remembered the beginnings of his work in his previous life, when he was a trainee listening to the advice of older colleagues. He accepted Broad's words. Even though his body was full of pain, he thought of using the healing spell to cure himself, but Broad refused. He told him that he must let his body recover naturally, for this would increase his endurance and strengthen his frame. After that, Broad instructed Luciel to heal all adventurers with his magic, no matter their race, even if they were not human. Luciel answered that he would do his best to help everyone and heal them without any discrimination. And at that time, a group of injured adventurers entered and asked Luciel if he could heal them. He agreed immediately and began treating their serious wounds. Afterwards, he told Broad that he could only use the healing spell 8 times a day. Broad answered that this number was enough for now, but advised him to cast it fully every day so his endurance would increase, and in time he would be able to repeat the spell many more times. Then Broad offered him a deal. He would give Luciel a place to live in the guild with no rent, 3 meals a day for free, and personal training under his own care every single day, in return for Luciel treating all the adventurers who were injured or sick. Luciel accepted at once, saying it was his duty to help them all without asking for any payment, which made Broad happy. He said that if the world had more healers like Luciel, the conditions of life would surely change for the better. Broad agreed with Luciel that he must not leave the guild during the training period, and this made Luciel feel as though he would be imprisoned. So they agreed that the training would last only 1 month, after which he would return to the Healers Guild to search for work that suited his skills. That same day, Broad took him to the Adventurer's restaurant and set before him a table filled with food. At first, Luciel thought it was a party arranged for him, but he was surprised to learn that all the food was for him alone. He told Broad that he could not possibly finish it, but within minutes he had devoured it all because of his great hunger after a full day of training. Afterwards, Broad led him to his room in the guild and ordered him to sleep early, for tomorrow would be a long day of training. But when Luciel tried to sleep, he felt it was far too early, so he decided to use the time for practice. He told himself that he would train on the healing spell, and indeed he spent the night moving between magic and meditation until he fell asleep very late, only to wake at sunrise to Broad's voice calling him. He went down to the restaurant where he met the cook Gulgar, who offered him a strange drink with an ugly smell and told him that Broad had asked him to make it especially for him because it was beneficial. He explained that the drink was made from active substances that safely enhance the body's energy. Luciel agreed to drink it, but from the first sip, the taste was so horrible that he thought of throwing away the rest of the cup. Yet when he saw Gulgar standing before him with his huge body and overwhelming strength, he was too afraid to refuse, and so he finished it despite its difficulty. The drink was called Compound X. Strangely, after he finished the cup, Luciel felt an enormous surge of power flowing through his body, as though he could do anything. He rushed into training with Broad, and even with that energy, he could not land a single blow on him. Still, he did not give up, but continued his attempts with a smile, believing that one day he would reach his goal and strike Broad. This astonished the trainer, who was surprised by his smile even while receiving blows. During that time, one of the adventurer sorceresses arrived with a serious wound caused by the bite of a giant rat. She asked Luciel to heal her, and he agreed at once, telling her that he could close the wound with magic. But perhaps the rat was poisoned and had passed an infection to her, so she must also see a doctor. He then used his magic and healed the wound. She was deeply moved, even crying, and thanked him, saying she had never before found anyone willing to help her because she was not human, and everyone had always treated her in the worst way. Luciel reassured her that he would be there for her anytime she needed him. At that moment, another adventurer came and asked Luciel how he had chosen to train with Broad, who was known to be such a harsh trainer that all adventurers avoided him. Then Luciel realized that the receptionist had deceived him when she said that Broad was the most popular and best trainer in the guild. That night, Luciel felt that all the adventurers in the guild were watching him, and he was greatly puzzled. On the next day, he asked Broad about the reason. Broad told him that they were worried he might run away from the guild because of the harsh training. Luciel grew angry and said that he himself had come willingly and asked for the training, and he had agreed to spend a whole month here, so he would never break his promise. But he warned them that if he ever felt he was still being watched, he would leave the guild before the end of the month. Then he turned and left. As the days passed in the guild, Luciel came to know more adventurers, and they began to like him and speak with him because he was always helping them. He also began to train with Broad in new skills such as aiming and archery, but he failed terribly at them. Finally, the month he had set for himself came to an end, and so Luciel decided to return once more to the Healers Guild to begin searching for a job that suited him. He thanked Broad for training him through the past period, and Broad gave him a few coins, telling him that it was the payment for healing the adventurers he had helped. At first, Luciel refused to take the money, but he finally agreed after realizing he would need it when registering again in the Healers Guild. Indeed, he went back to the guild and told the receptionist that he had been training at the Adventurers Guild, but had now returned to seek work as a healer. The receptionist noticed that his magical power had increased, which raised him to a higher rank, and also meant a higher registration fee. Luciel was troubled, for he did not have enough money for his new level. At that moment, Broad entered with a large sum of money, which he handed to the receptionist so she could register Luciel at the new rank. Then he said to him, "I have paid your fee, but I ask you to return with me to the Adventurers Guild. There, I will train you again so your strength will grow. And at the same time, you will heal the adventurers until you repay the cost I have covered for you." Luciel agreed and returned to the guild. That day, Broad gave him a new spell book and told him the time had come to learn the poison healing spell. Now that he had mastered the wound healing spell, for these were the two most important spells any healer must command. Luciel took the book and promised to study it with diligence and learn all it contained. The days passed for Luciel inside the guild, and he did nothing but train in martial arts until he grew bored of the routine life. So Brod suggested a new experience and took him to the brother of the cook Golgar, who was a famous butcher. There, the butcher began to teach him how to handle animals and prepare them into proper meat for eating. He explained that he was responsible for distributing meat to guilds across all the cities and was highly respected in his field. Then he asked Luciel to practice on a wild rabbit. Luciel followed the instructions and prepared the rabbit's meat for cooking, but the experience was so difficult for him that he declared he would never try it again. A week later, on his day off, the receptionist Nanayella took him to the library where she had prepared for him a collection of history and geography books. She told him that knowledge was as important as martial arts and magic, and that he must learn about the kingdom he lived in. She began to tell him about the history of the land and the cities within it, and she explained that their city was the only one that had abolished slavery, making it a crime punishable by law. Luciel thanked his fortune that he lived in this city, for had he gone to another, he would have become a slave, since back then he had neither money nor skills to ensure his survival. Days and months passed until Luciel had spent 6 full months in the guild. The marks of training were clear on him, for his muscles had grown and his strength had increased compared to the first time he had entered. Nanayella decided to reward him, so she went out with him to buy new clothes, saying they were a gift from her in appreciation of his efforts, and she thanked him for all that he had given them. At that moment, they heard a powerful scream. They rushed quickly toward the source of the sound and found the receptionist at the Healers Guild, Monica, lying on the ground with severe stab wounds. Without hesitation, Luciel saved her and carried her back to the Adventurers Guild. After a while, Monica awoke to see Luciel and Nanayella sitting beside her. She thanked him warmly for saving her from death. Luciel asked her what had happened, who had attacked her, and for what reason. Then Monica began to tell her story. She said that days earlier, her friend had fallen gravely ill, so they had gone to the clinic of a famous healer named Bodakuri. He treated her friend but demanded a huge sum of money for the healing spell. When they did not have the amount, he did not hesitate to sell her friend as a slave to another country where slavery was still practiced. And when Monica objected to what he had done in front of everyone, he sent a criminal to eliminate her. At that moment, Luciel was struck with shock that there were healers so filled with greed. His determination grew stronger that Bodakuri must be punished. He left Monica's side, thinking of how to capture him. Yet before he could go far, Monica called to him once more, thanking him again for helping her, and asked him about the cost of her treatment. At that time, Luciel noticed Monica's worry, for she feared that the cost of treatment would be too high for her to afford. But he reassured her, telling her that she had been kind to him and helped him from the very first moment he applied to the Healers Guild, and for that reason there would be no fee at all for her healing. His words made Monica thank him deeply, and she promised that one day she would repay his kindness. A month after Monica's incident, they finally managed to find the criminal who had attacked her, but there was no evidence that could convict Bodakuri, and so they could not arrest him. Even so, Monica felt happy and confirmed once again that she would leave the Healers Guild and join Luciel and Brod in the Adventurers Guild. One day, Brod came rushing to call for Luciel, telling him that a large group of adventurers had been injured in battle and their lives were in grave danger. They needed healing at once. He went with him immediately to the place, where he found dozens of the wounded with injuries of every kind. He began by treating the most serious cases first, then continued healing the rest one by one until his energy was drained completely, and he collapsed from exhaustion. When he awoke, he remembered that he had not managed to heal every single one of them. Even though he had saved the most critical cases, he was not satisfied with himself, for he wished that he could have healed everyone without exception. Days passed until Luciel had completed a full year in the Adventurers Guild. During that year, his magical and combat skills had advanced greatly, and for that reason, he decided to leave the guild and continue his journey alone. He went to Brod and told him that the time had come to search for work where he could rely on his own skills. Brod asked him about his future plans, and Luciel said that he would seek new magic books to learn the spells within them, since he had only one spell he could use, the healing spell. After improving his abilities, he planned to open his own clinic, where the healing fees would be very low so that people of every class could receive treatment. Brod admired his ambition and wished him success in the life ahead of him. So Luciel left the guild to begin a new adventure. His first step was to go to the Healers Guild, where he saw the guild master distressed by the heavy burden of work work after Monika's transfer to the Adventurers Guild. Luciel told her that this was the best choice to ensure Monika's safety far away from danger. At that moment, the master noticed the great changes that had appeared in him, clear strength and increased muscle, and she asked him what he had done through the year to reach this state. He began to tell her of his daily training, how he worked to raise both his magical energy and his physical power. Yet she was surprised at his choice, for she believed he could have improved his magic just as well while training in clinics, and at the same time he would have earned money. But Luciel disagreed, saying that training in magic and helping adventurers was far more important than any clinic work, for he had not only strengthened his magic power, but had also developed his body and his combat skills. Convinced by his words, the master took his magic card to raise his rank, but she was shocked to find that he had risen several levels in such a short time. She told him that the fee would now be many times greater, for each level demanded a higher payment than the one before. Since Luciel did not have enough money, he first decided to find work to collect the needed amount. But to his surprise, Broad entered the guild carrying a bag full of coins, telling him that this was the profit from healing adventurers at the guild. He gave it to the master to register Luciel at the new level. Afterwards, he asked him to return to work with him again in the guild, offering him payment for every adventurer he treated, in addition to continued training under his hand. He told him that the rate of adventurer injuries and deaths had dropped greatly since his arrival, and for that reason, they did not want him to part from them, but to remain one of them. Broad succeeded in persuading him, and Luciel agreed and returned with him to the guild. Even though he had been away only a few hours, he felt as if he had come home again. To his surprise, all the adventurers held a great celebration for his return, thanking him for everything he had done for them. They even refused to begin the feast until he drank the Compound X. And so Luciel was forced to drink it once more, despite its terrible taste. And during the celebration, a group of adventurers known as the White Wolf approached and thanked Luciel warmly for saving their lives in their last battle. They invited him to join them one day so they could take him on a wide tour through the city and show him its details and landmarks. At the same time, Monika came close to him with a smile, telling him how happy she was that he had returned once more to the Adventurers Guild. On that same day, Broad handed him new books of magic and asked him to study all the spells within them so that he could expand his magical power and grow stronger than before. Elsewhere, the healer Bodakuri was burning with rage after noticing that the number of patients coming to him had dropped sharply since Luciel's arrival. The next day, he went straight to the guild and provoked a quarrel, accusing Luciel of ruining his clinic by charging patients such low fees that they had abandoned him, claiming his prices were now considered expensive and unreasonable. Luciel answered calmly, telling him the true reason was his greed and the high cost of his treatments, which prevented many people from receiving healing. He even called him a corrupt healer. These words drove Bodakuri to madness. He shouted that Luciel's magic was weak and unskilled compared to his own, then offered him to work under him or to raise his fees. When Luciel refused both offers, Bodakuri ordered his men to attack and kill him. At that moment, Broad suddenly appeared, capturing Bodakuri's men one after another. He then turned to Bodakuri and warned him that if he dared approach Luciel again, he himself would deal with his punishment. Terrified, Bodakuri fled with his men. Afterwards, Broad sat with Luciel, telling him that his past training had been only basic defense for small encounters, but with Bodakuri's enmity, his life was now in real danger. For this reason, he must train as a knight and true warrior. From the very next day, Broad began strict training with him, teaching him to handle different weapons, swords, spears, and even shields, so he would be ready for any sudden attack. Still, Bodakuri was not satisfied. He sat down and wrote a long letter to the main Healers Guild, accusing Luciel of obstructing his work and stealing his patients by charging extremely low fees. He also accused him of greed and demanded huge compensation for his losses. He sealed the letter and sent it, laughing wickedly as he awaited the punishment that would fall upon Luciel. 6 whole months passed after Bodakuri's letter. One day, Luciel was eating lunch with Broad in the Adventurers restaurant. Golgar noticed the great progress and strength he had gained, saying all the credit went to Broad, who had trained him so strictly that he mastered combat arts and no longer feared wielding swords, but used them skillfully. During their talk, Nanaella arrived carrying a sealed letter from the main Healers Guild addressed to Luciel. When he opened it, he found they were asking him to join them at the Church of Coral. After hearing of his remarkable skill in healing spells, they also informed him that he had been promoted to the 5th rank of healers in a very short time. but Broad saw the matter differently. He told him this was not an ordinary invitation, but a trap set by Bodakuri to drive him away from the city, regain his clinic, and prepare the chance to strike and kill him. Hearing this, Luciel felt worried and afraid, yet he knew he could not refuse, for no one could oppose the main guild. Thus, Luciel learned that his transfer would take place after 6 months. He decided to spend that time healing as many adventurers as possible, exhausting himself until his energy was drained. But Gulgar brought him the Compound X, and once he drank it, his strength returned, allowing him to continue healing the injured. At the same time, Gulgar asked Broad if there was any danger in Luciel drinking it daily, but he replied that the ancient books mentioned it gave great power to its drinker without causing harm. Meanwhile, Gulgar's brother came to inform them that he had fulfilled the agreement of not allowing any attack on Luciel, even if he left the city, confirming that Bodakuri had indeed been the one behind the plot, just as they had expected. The days passed quickly until the final day of Luciel's stay in the Adventurers Guild before his departure. He went to Broad and asked him to come out with him. Together, they walked until they reached the graveyard. There, Luciel stood before the grave of the adventurer he had once failed to save. He said that even though 2 years had passed since his death, and though he had not been able to rescue him, he still felt the weight of guilt. He asked Broad to take care of the health of the adventurers, to increase their training, and to make them take herbs regularly. Broad asked him the reason behind all these steps and what their benefit was. Luciel answered that his daily training had raised his strength and magical energy and reduced his injuries, and if every adventurer followed the same, they would not suffer dangerous wounds, making their healing easy without always needing spells. He added that once he left, the clinics would raise their fees, which would leave poor adventurers unable to pay, forcing them either to die or to fall into slavery. Broad was convinced by his words and agreed with him. Before leaving, Luciel turned and called to Monica and Nanayella to come out of hiding, for he had known from the start that they were watching and following them. And indeed, Monica and Nanayella stepped out, telling Luciel that they wanted to bid him farewell before his departure. He seized the moment to thank them both for all they had done for him. First, he turned to Nanayella, telling her that she had cared for him since the moment he first entered the guild, always defending him whenever the older adventurers tried to harass him, and that he would never forget her kindness. He thanked her deeply for everything she had given him. Then he turned to Monica, telling her that she had supported him from the day he joined the Healers Guild, and even when she had been wounded and he had saved her life, she had inspired him to double his efforts in training so he could protect her. That was what drove him to excel and reach the 5th rank in such a short time. His heartfelt words brought tears to their eyes, and they both said they would never forget him, nor forget all that he had done for them and for the guild. Then Luciel returned to the guild to bid farewell to everyone. Before leaving, he met Broad, who handed him a magic bag along with a pouch filled with gold coins, saying it was a reward from the Adventurers Guild in recognition of his efforts. Luciel was so moved that he cried as he said his goodbyes. Then he departed to begin his new journey in another city, a different adventure, but this time on his own. As soon as he left the city, he found the White Wolf Party waiting to escort him to the main guild. Tears filled his eyes once more as he saw their care and affection for him. He set off with them toward the main Healers Guild, and on the way he told them that his supply of Compound X had run out, and he needed more. He explained that this drink had been the greatest reason he could maintain his energy for long periods, and that he wanted to keep using it in his new work so he would not fall into weakness or be bullied. They agreed, and they took him to the nearest restaurant belonging to the Adventurers Guild, where Luciel asked the guildmaster for more of the compound. When the master learned that he was the disciple of Broad, the man everyone spoke of as the only one able to drink Compound X, he decided to test him personally. He gave Luciel a cup and said that he could not hand over the drink unless he was sure he could endure it. Luciel drank the entire cup in front of him, proving his strength. Satisfied, the master gave him all the supply he had asked for, even agreeing that whenever he needed more, he could take it directly from him. Before Luciel left, the master thanked him for helping adventurers with such low healing fees. Luciel answered that it was his duty and that he would always use his magic to help people. Then he continued his journey with the White Wolf until they reached the headquarters of the main guild. There, their part in his story ended, and they left him to face his new life on his own. The first thing that caught Luciel's eyes was the massive building of the guild, far larger than any healer's guild he had ever seen. It made him nervous about the new life that awaited him. Still, he entered the guild, introduced himself to the staff, and asked to meet the one in charge of his employment. A man came forward, introducing himself as Granhart, and led him to the second floor of the church by way of a magical elevator. There, by chance, he met Lumina, who, even after 2 years since their first encounter, still remembered him and welcomed him warmly. She asked him that they speak together soon. After that, Granhart sat with Luciel to begin the discussion. Luciel was tense and uneasy, but Granhart pulled out a letter and said it had come from a healer in his old city, accusing him of ruining the work of his fellow healers. He asked if this was true. To his surprise, Luciel answered with courage, admitting that the accusation was true, but for a good reason. He explained that the healers in his city demanded such outrageous fees that the poor could never afford them, and many of them died as a result. That was why he had chosen to help them, rather than become a corrupt healer like the others. He then requested that Granhart standardize the fees of healing across all healers to prevent greed and exploitation. Granhart admired his words and said he would present the idea to the priest. Then he explained the nature of Luciel's new work, telling him he would become a hunter of zombie spirits. Luciel was shocked by the task, but Granhart reassured him, saying that he would understand everything the next day from his colleague Jordo. When Luciel learned that his salary would be 20 gold coins a month, he grew excited about his new position. After finishing the meeting, he went to see Lumina, who asked him about his work. When he told her that he would be hunting zombie spirits, she warned him that it was a dangerous role, because the spirits were imprisoned in a crypt beneath the guild. Over the years, that crypt had turned into a maze filled with evil spirits, making escape difficult. Her words made Luciel nervous, but she quickly reassured him, telling him that if he focused on his duties, the task would be manageable, and he would return safely. He thanked her for her advice and went back to his room to rest, preparing himself for his new mission the next day. And indeed, on the following morning, Luciel went to Granhart, who introduced him to his new companion Jordo, the one who would work with him in exorcising evil spirits. Granhart handed him the official robe of the healers and asked him to wear it. Once prepared, Luciel descended with Jordo into the labyrinth. There, Jordo reassured him, saying the work would be easy and that he would grow used to it quickly, for only the beginning required focus until he memorized the paths. After that, he would be able to accomplish his missions and destroy the spirits with ease. In their first encounter, a zombie appeared on the path. Jordo began chanting the purification spell, which annihilated the zombie and sealed its soul inside a black gemstone. He explained that this was the method to defeat all zombies they would face, but he warned that the number of times the spell could be used each day was limited, and once it was spent, he must leave the labyrinth to avoid danger. Then he left Luciel alone inside to experience the trial himself. Luciel wandered, searching for zombies to defeat, until he found a group of them. The moment he saw them, terror struck him, making him forget the spell. But before they reached him, he gathered his courage and recited it at the last second, turning them all into gemstones. Then an idea struck him: to bind the spell into the sword he carried, so that he could slay many zombies at once without needing to recite the spell each time. His plan worked, and he wiped out all the zombies on the first floor. He did not stop there, but descended to the second floor, where more zombies awaited, surrounded by floating spirits. He overcame them easily, then continued down to the third floor, expecting it to be similar. Instead, he was met with terrifying skeletons. Though their appearance frightened him, he steadied himself and cut them down quickly with his sword, deciding then to end his mission for the day and continue tomorrow. At that time, Jordo entered, searching for him because he had been gone for hours and he feared he was lost. But he found him safe, holding a large number of gemstones from the spirits he had defeated. He asked why his magical rank had not increased despite killing so many. Jordo explained that what he had faced was only a training phase and the real missions would begin tomorrow. Afterward, he led him to the healer's shop inside the guild, where the healer Katlia welcomed them. She asked Luciel to hand over the gemstones, and she was stunned by the enormous number, saying she had not seen anything like it for a long time. She explained that the stones converted into points that could be used to buy weapons or books of spells. Luciel discovered that spell books were extremely expensive, so he chose instead to purchase a spear and sword, saving his points for later when he could afford a new spell book. When he left the shop, he found Granhart waiting with new instructions to take care of his magic card, and that if he needed any tools, he could borrow them from the storage but must return them later. He also gave him an outfit different from the official healer's robe, one suited for adventurer missions. missions. Thus ended his first day. The next day, the true missions began. Luciel continued slaying zombies, moving from one level to the next, from floor to floor. With every battle, his magical power grew stronger, and the number of gemstones multiplied. Each time, he returned to Catalea with more stones, trading them for weapons that aided him in his adventures. Days passed until the 10th day arrived. On that day, Luciel reached the 10th floor of the labyrinth, where he discovered a strange door. He knew at once it was the room of the zombie lord. That same day, he asked Jordo about it, but to his surprise, Jordo knew nothing, for he had never reached that depth. He marveled at how fast Luciel had advanced. The next day, Luciel prepared all his weapons and entered the room. The door shut behind him, and tension filled his heart. His fear deepened when he saw the countless zombies inside. He reminded himself of the purification spell and tried to use it in one strike, but to his shock, it had no effect. He realized the room was cut off from magic, and no spell could function there. As the zombies closed in, fear threatened to overwhelm him, but he chose to rely on the combat skills he had learned from Broad. Those very skills saved him, allowing him to slay them all. Then the zombie lord appeared, a terrifying skeleton. Luciel noticed it recoiled before his magic sword as if in fear. Understanding this, he pressed his advantage, distracting it and striking repeatedly until he cut it down. Its soul transformed into a gemstone unlike any other. After completing his mission, he went to Catalea and handed over all he had gathered. She was astonished when she saw he had surpassed 100,000 gemstones. But Luciel told her that was not all. He showed her the clothes and crown of the zombie lord. The moment she saw them, she said they must meet the governor at once. She took him to the governor, who turned out to be a woman. She recounted to her all that Luciel had done. The new healer who had reached the 10th floor, slain the zombie lord, and brought back all his belongings. When the items were displayed, the governor was shocked, saying they were the possessions of the former high priest of the church who had vanished 12 years ago without a trace. She told Luciel that these items were of great importance to her and that she wished to buy them from him. Luciel agreed, but asked for one thing in return: a larger magic bag, since his own could no longer hold all the stones he gathered each day. The governor accepted, promising to give him a magic pouch stronger and more useful than his current one, and told him to collect it from Catalea the following day. Luciel thanked her for her kindness and left with Catalea, who told him he was truly fortunate, for the governor's approval was proof of her admiration for his work. Her words filled Luciel with joy and strengthened his resolve to work even harder in the days to come. And after that, Luciel sat reflecting on his battle with the zombie lord, asking himself if he had acted recklessly when he faced him. He imagined that if Broad had known what he had done, he would certainly have punished him harshly for risking his life without sufficient training. For this reason, he told himself that he must return once more to adventurer training alongside his duties as a healer, because such training would help him carry out his missions inside the labyrinth. Then he left his room to have breakfast, and on the way, he met Lumina with her assistants from the night squad. She greeted him warmly, saying that she had heard of his achievements in defeating the zombies within the labyrinth, and of his rapid progress in his work. Luciel began to tell her about what he had faced there, including his last battle against the Lord. Then he told her of his wish to return to the Adventurers Guild, to train more with Broad so he could sharpen his combat skills. But she explained that no one could leave the main guild without permission from the governor, and since his contract was not yet finished, he would not be allowed to depart for another city. However, she offered him a better proposal, to join the training of the night squad with her. Luciel found this the best option and agreed, arranging to meet her after finishing his work in the labyrinth. That same day, Luciel descended into the labyrinth and reached the 12th floor, where he slew all the zombies within. Then he returned to Catalea, handed over the gemstones he had gathered, and asked about the magic pouch. She gave it to him, explaining that it could hold anything regardless of its size or number, and that he could summon any item he wished from it simply by thinking of it, without needing to empty the entire contents. Luciel thanked her for her help and left. Afterwards, he went to the training grounds where Lumina and her squad were waiting. As soon as he arrived, the training began. At first, Lumina warned him that the exercises might be difficult, but Luciel did not believe her. Having endured Broad's training, he thought the female knights could not withstand the same harshness as he had, being the only man among them. But when the running drills began, he was shocked by their true strength. He soon realized he was the weakest of them all, and he was the first to collapse from exhaustion, asking for rest after falling behind by 8 full laps. Once the running was finished, it was time for sword duels. Lumina asked asked him about his level, and he said that he had learned dual sword techniques from Broad in the Adventurers Guild and practiced them daily in the labyrinth to grow stronger. Then the duel between them began. From the very first exchange, her superiority was clear, but Luciel did not give up. He entered round after round, and each time Lumina proved her dominance with skill, until he thought to himself that if Broad were here, he would have punished him severely for such performance. Refusing to surrender, he kept trying until Lumina landed the decisive blow that knocked him unconscious. After some time, Luciel awoke to find two of Lumina's knights beside him. They told him he was very important to her, for she had ordered them to remain by his side until he awoke and to care for him. Thus ended his first day. On the next day, the squad was divided into two teams, and Luciel joined one of them. They began training as group duels, and this time his team was the winner. This surprised one of the knights on the other team, who could not believe her group had lost despite Luciel being among them. At that point, Lumina spoke in his defense, saying that Luciel was one of the strongest and most important healers and adventurers trained personally by Broad. Even though Broad was known for his strictness and severity, Luciel had never once given up, but always faced him with courage, even in defeat. That was what had given him such high skill in such a short time, to the point that cities everywhere were speaking of him and calling him the strange healer, for he possessed unyielding determination and bore every pain and hardship of training until he reached his goal. Luciel felt embarrassed by her praise, but he thanked her sincerely for defending him. On the following day, Luciel descended into the labyrinth again and noticed that his combat skills had indeed improved. This helped him reach the 20th floor in a single day. There, he found a door similar to the one where he had once faced the Lord on the 10th floor. He knew that behind it awaited an even stronger foe, but this time he resolved not to be reckless as before. He first returned to Catalea and told her of his discovery, asking whether another of the vanished high priests might lie beyond the door. She told him she knew nothing, for no healer had ever reached the 20th floor before. Luciel then decided to rest and prepare himself thoroughly before facing whatever awaited him in the depths of the labyrinth. And unfortunately, Luciel did not wake up on his own, for one of Lumina's knights came to rouse him. She introduced herself as Elizabeth, saying that she would be responsible for training him that day. Indeed, Luciel went down to the training grounds and began a duel with her. There he realized she was far stronger than he had imagined, with speed so great that anyone facing her would think she had vanished before their eyes. Through that training, Luciel learned many new skills, and this gave him the confidence to feel prepared to enter the chamber he had seen in the labyrinth and fight whatever lurked inside. The next day, he carried out his plan. Entering the chamber with calm and confidence, he defeated the boss within a short time and took all of his belongings. When he emerged from the labyrinth, he went with Catalea to the governor to deliver the treasures. The governor said that what she saw before her was one of the priests who had suddenly disappeared from the church long ago. Luciel asked her about the secret of the labyrinth, for no one had ever understood its true nature. The governor told him that hundreds of years ago there had been no labyrinth beneath the church, but due to the great corruption of the city, evil spirits had multiplied, creating the labyrinth and transforming into destructive zombies. Luciel asked if there was any way to be rid of it, and she replied that no one had ever reached its end, and so no one knew what fate awaited them or if a solution existed. Then Luciel requested that she provide him with the weapons and armor necessary for protection. He declared his decision to continue his journey into the labyrinth until he reached its end and found a way to destroy it. The governor admired his resolve and encouraged him, promising that the tools he required would be ready for him the next day with Catalea. Thus, his day ended. On the following morning, Luciel went to the Adventurers Guild in the city, the same guild where he usually purchased Compound X. There, he asked the guild master for 10 full barrels, a request that shocked everyone with its sheer size. But the master trusted his wisdom and ability to handle the substance, and said he would provide them all, on one condition, that Luciel heal the wounded adventurers in the guild. Luciel apologized, explaining that as a healer of the main guild, he was forbidden from practicing healing elsewhere. Yet the master reminded him of the Adventurers Guild and of Broad, who had been the greatest reason Luciel had become one of the strongest healers in the kingdom. These words stirred a memory in Luciel, giving him an idea. He told the master that he could indeed heal them, not as a healer of the main guild, but as a registered adventurer of the Adventurers Guild. His only condition was that each patient pay him a single silver coin. The master agreed without hesitation and went to prepare the Compound X. Meanwhile, Luciel asked the clerk about the cause of the adventurer's injuries. She told him that powerful and violent monsters had attacked them, leaving them with grievous wounds. Tragically, they could not go to any city clinic because the costs were unbearably high. Worse still, if one of them could not pay, he was sold as a slave in another city. Hearing this, Luciel understood the truth and felt a deep determination to help them further. Moments later, the master returned and led Luciel to the training hall, where he found adventurers wounded everywhere. The moment they saw him in the healer's robe, they attacked in anger, believing he was like the corrupt healers who refused to treat them without huge sums of money. But the master stopped them, saying, "This is no ordinary healer. This is Luciel, the healer spoken of in every city, called the zombie healer." Luciel was shocked by the strange title and asked why they called him that. They explained that people had given him the name because he had endured Broad's merciless training, which no other adventurer had ever survived. At that, Luciel spoke to them seriously, laying down 3 conditions before he would heal them. First, each one must pay a single silver coin. Second, if the Healers Guild ever required assistance, they must provide it without hesitation. Third, they must completely abandon the title Zombie Healer. All the adventurers agreed, so Luciel used a wide-range healing spell, restoring them all at once. They were astonished at his magical power, which erased their pain in moments, and they thanked him with all their hearts. Afterwards, they sat together thinking of a new title for him. After many suggestions, they settled on calling him the Strange Healer. The name irritated Luciel at first, but he admitted it was far better than Zombie Healer. Once he was assured of their recovery, Luciel returned to the Healers Guild. Before descending into the labyrinth again, he told Catleya that he might remain inside for a full week to explore it. She advised him not to be reckless, to guard his life, and to protect himself. He promised her that he would. But before the week was finished, Catleya was shocked to see him emerge from the labyrinth. He told her that his supply of Compound X had run out, and that he had to go back to the guild to buy more. So he returned, and this time all the adventurers recognized him and welcomed him warmly. Many thanked him for his help and for saving them. He then asked the master for a new supply of Compound X, and gave him a letter to deliver to Broad and his friends in the guild. Afterwards, he treated the wounded and sat to speak with them. He asked if any of them knew news of Broad, or the rest of his companions in the Adventurers Guild. One said that Broad was now training adventurers with such severity that no one could escape his hand. Another added that Gulgar was preparing meals from Compound X to strengthen the adventurers. A third mentioned that some of the guild's clerks were about to be married. Hearing this, Luciel was stunned. He imagined that the ones getting married might be Nanayella and Monica, especially since he had sent them many letters without receiving even a single reply. He felt hurt, thinking they had forgotten him so much that they had not told him of their marriage or invited him. His sorrow deepened. When Luciel returned again to the main guild, he found that Catleya had prepared all the weapons and tools he had requested from the governor. Seeing his focus on Compound X, she asked him about it. He explained that it was a magical drink he used to increase his energy and to face zombies more effectively. Since Catleya had no knowledge of such a drink, she said they must inform the governor about it and explain to her the truth of Compound X. And indeed, Catleya took Luciel to the governor and told her about the strange drink he had been using. The governor reassured them, explaining that the compound was mentioned in legendary records, and every source spoke of the immense strength it granted to adventurers who consumed it. Yet no research had ever suggested it caused harm. She promised Luciel that she would continue searching through more archives to uncover the true secrets of Compound X. Afterwards, Luciel returned once more to the labyrinth to continue his exploration. While checking through his magic pouch, he discovered a book that spoke about Compound X. He opened it and read with keen interest. He learned that the formula had been created by a renowned scholar. At first, it existed in the form of weak capsules. When they failed to achieve the desired effect, the scholar attempted to turn it into a liquid drink. His initial trials failed because of its foul taste and smell, yet he refused to abandon his work. He eventually delivered it to the Adventurers Guild, claiming it would prove invaluable in the future. His prediction came true when adventurers began relying on it to strengthen their endurance. From the book, Luciel learned that the compound's design was based on reducing human attachment to behaviors that drain their energy, such as excessive sleep, overindulgence in food, or being distracted by emotions. He paused in thought and said to himself, "I still love food and I sleep normally, but could it be that the compound has dulled my emotions? After all, until now, I have not once thought about love or forming a bond with anyone." The realization startled him, yet he quickly reassured himself. "Right now, my duty is to conquer the labyrinth. I have no time for love or attachments. Once I finish this mission, then I will search for someone to love and build a life with her. A full month passed as Luciel continued battling inside the labyrinth. During this time, his rank rose step by step until he reached the 40th level. There he found a new chamber belonging to a different boss. But this time, he felt a strange fear, an instinct that warned him. He decided to postpone entering until he was truly prepared to face whatever awaited inside. After that month, Luciel finally emerged from the labyrinth and decided to spend his day of rest visiting the Adventurers Guild to check on everyone. Before he could enter, a small girl tugged at his robe, trying desperately to speak to him. Yet she was unable to form words, so he could not understand her plea. He brought her with him into the guild, and there he was stunned to see Monica and Nanaella waiting for him. They welcomed him warmly, and his heart filled with joy at seeing them again after so long. He immediately asked why they had come. Before they could answer, several adventurers rushed to pull Luciel away to help treat the wounded. He spent the entire day healing the injured, while Nanaella and Monica tried to discern what the little girl wished to say. At last, they realized she was trying to tell them that her family was gravely injured and in danger. They asked Luciel to accompany her to the poor district to save them, insisting they would go with him. He refused at first, saying the place was too dangerous for them, but then the guild master himself intervened, declaring that he would accompany them as well. This gave Luciel more confidence, and he agreed to let Nanaella and Monica join the mission, so they all set out together to the poor quarter. There, Luciel was met with a horrifying sight, countless people lying on the ground with severe wounds. He soon realized that bandits had attacked them, striking and robbing them mercilessly. But just as Luciel was about to recite his healing spell, one of the wounded suddenly rose, stumbling toward him in a haze of unconsciousness, and without warning drove a blade into his body. And this left Luciel stunned by the sudden betrayal, pain searing through the wound. In that instant, he thought this might be his end, just as he had once died in his former life. But he told himself, I am not the same anymore. This time, I can save myself. I will never allow myself to be weak again. At once he chanted the healing spell with speed, and the wound closed immediately. Not only that, but he extended the spell outward, healing all the wounded around him. As soon as they regained consciousness, their pain was gone, and they thanked him deeply for the great kindness he had given them. The man who had stabbed him stepped forward, apologizing, saying he had not been in his right mind and had only been trying to protect his family from bandits. When Luciel learned he was the father of the little girl who had sought his help, he forgave him without hesitation. Afterwards, Luciel turned to Monica and Nanaella, asking why they had come to the city. He recalled the rumor of their wedding he had heard from the adventurers and waited for them to confirm it. But to his shock, he learned it was actually 2 other clerks who were to be married. They told him that they had explained this in their letters, but he was even more stunned when he realized he had never received any. At the same time, they too discovered that none of his letters had ever reached them. Then the guildmaster stepped forward and confessed it was his fault, for he had often forgotten to deliver the letters. At last, Luciel understood the misunderstanding, and he knew Monica and Nanaella still remembered and cared for him. He asked how long they would stay in the city, and they told him 3 days before returning home to begin preparing for the wedding, so Luciel chose to spend those 3 days with them. He took them on a tour of the city, and together they helped him heal the adventurers. The days passed swiftly, and though he was saddened when the time came to part from them again, he promised he would visit them as soon as he could. Afterwards, he returned to the Adventurers Guild, where the people of the poor district awaited him, thanking him once more for giving them a new chance at life. They told him that the kingdom itself had now taken notice of their plight and granted them better living conditions. From the girl's father, Luciel learned that she had lost her voice in an old accident, so he decided to test on her a new healing spell for the first time, hoping it would restore her voice. Thus ended his brief respite, and he returned to the main Healers Guild. There, Lumina was waiting for him. "You've been absent too long from sword training," she said. "Today it begins again." They trained together, and she noticed the great growth in his skill. For the first time, Luciel attacked her with such force that she felt fear and stepped back. Shocked and impressed, she admitted he had indeed grown far stronger. His day ended on that note. The next morning, Luciel prepared to enter the labyrinth once more. Before doing so, he stopped by Katlia, who handed him a letter from Lumina. Opening it, he read her words. He was now ready to open the chamber of the 40th floor. Yet she warned him, the boss within was the strongest evil spirit he had faced so far. He must fight with all the courage and strength he possessed. Her words inspired him, and Luciel took every precaution before stepping inside. The moment of confrontation came. Inside, he met the Floor 40 boss, larger and stronger than any spirit he had ever seen since first entering the labyrinth. He launched spells against it, but they failed. He struck with his sword, but even that could not overcome the boss's power. Fear pressed in on him, so he turned to the barrels of Compound X, shielding himself with them, for the boss refused to approach their stench. For a full week, Lucio lived surrounded by barrels, the boss standing motionless before him. His mind raced day and night, searching for a solution. At one point, he nearly gave up, whispering to himself that death would soon take him. But then he remembered his friends, the adventurers, and all who cared for him. He realized he had to live for their sake. His courage reignited, and with all his strength he charged the boss without hesitation. With a single decisive strike, he severed its head and ended it forever. Its soul was sealed into a gemstone, and its skeletal form vanished completely. But in its place appeared a great magic tome. Lucio took it, resolved to leave the labyrinth, but to his dismay, the door refused to open. He found himself trapped, with no choice but to descend further, so he continued. On some days he fought the zombies head-on. On others he fled, hiding behind the barrels of Compound X to keep them at bay. In this way, he pressed onward until he reached the 50th floor. There, he discovered another chamber, but this time, true fear weighed on him. He sat before it, training ceaselessly on a spell greater than the purification spell, the sanctuary spell. Days turned into months, and before long, Lucio realized he had been inside for 6 whole months. By then, every scrap of food he had carried was gone, and in that moment, Lucio thought surely that death awaited him. I face death from both sides, he told himself. Either I starve without food, or I fall to the monster behind the 50th floor gate. If there is no escape, then I will choose courage and die facing the beast. With resolve, he opened the gate and was stunned as the Labyrinth King appeared before him, the oldest and most powerful spirit in the entire maze. He tried casting the purification spell, but its power was far too weak against the king's overwhelming might. So he drank a magic amplification elixir, then for the first time unleashed the sanctuary spell. To his shock, its force erupted with unimaginable strength, cutting down the mighty king with ease. The body vanished, its soul sealed away, and in its place lay a tome of forbidden magic. Lucio picked it up and whispered, "I must show this to the governor." But as he turned to leave, another magical gate appeared from nothing. Compelled by curiosity, he stepped through and found himself in a vast chamber where a colossal dragon lay, weak and grievously wounded. Instantly, Lucio cast his healing spell upon it. The dragon's strength returned, and though Lucio trembled with fear and wished to flee, the beast spoke softly. It would not harm him. Instead, it thanked him and granted him a treasure of great value as a reward. When Lucio asked why it was here, the dragon explained that this was the final floor of the labyrinth. Beyond it, no monsters or zombies remained. It told him its story. Long ago, a corrupt high priest had bound it with a forbidden spell, trapping it here for centuries. No healer had ever reached this place, so none had known of its existence. The dragon noticed that Lucio showed no greed for treasure, caring only for the mission, and so it said, "I will aid you with my spirit even after my death. But know this, 40 years from now, a great demon will be born. Its power will be so terrifying that none may stand against it. You must prepare, or the kingdom will fall." It asked him to promise that he would always use his strength for good, and that he would protect dragons in need. Lucio swore it with all his heart. The dragon's spirit vanished, leaving behind armor and a spear, which Lucio took. At once, he was transported by magic out of the labyrinth, back to the Healer's Guild. The moment Katlia saw him, she ran to him in tears, crying, "I can't believe you're still alive. Everyone thought you had perished after vanishing so long inside the labyrinth." She hurried him in to show the others. There he was astonished to find that even Broad and the adventurers had been at the guild for some time, searching for news of him. Outside, citizens had been protesting, believing the guild had eliminated Lucio because of his kindness to the poor. When Broad saw him, he embraced him with joy, finally reassured of his safety. Lucio calmed the people, assuring them he was alive and well. Soon after, Broad told him he would return to his own city, urging Lucio to care for himself and not risk his life so recklessly. Tears filled his eyes as he said farewell. He promised that when his duties at the main guild were complete, he would return to them. Before leaving, Lucio entrusted him with letters for Nanaella and Monica. Then Lucio went with Cattleya and Lumina to meet the governor. Relieved that he was alive, she asked him to recount what had happened during his 6 months in the labyrinth. He told her everything. The endless hordes of zombies, the bosses he defeated, the dragon he had healed, and the warning of the demon to come. Alarmed, the governor dismissed everyone else and listened closely, as did Lumina and Cat Leia. She confirmed the matter was dire and must be investigated immediately. At the end, Luciel added, "I conquered the legend of the labyrinth alone. I cleansed it of all the evil spirits, yet I am still only ranked at the first level of magic, even though my strength and combat skills have soared beyond measure." All were stunned. The governor explained, "In my research I discovered the side effect of Compound X. It halts the growth of magical rank. It strengthens your body and endurance, but your magic level will never rise." The realization crushed Luciel. To advance, he would have to abandon Compound X. Sadness gripped him, but he knew the truth. The next day, the governor kept her promise. She granted him a great promotion, and before all healers declared Luciel to be the new guild master. She proclaimed that every decision he made from this day forward would be law, for he had proven his heart was for the people. Nervously, Luciel stood before the assembly and spoke. "We must create new laws that protect the poor, those who cannot afford the cost of healing. Our duty is to help them, not abandon them." His words inspired the guild, and together they resolved to change their rules. In that moment, Luciel felt his life had truly changed. He remembered his old self, weak, nameless, without worth. But now, with this second chance at life, he stood as a man who could achieve greatness, guiding others with both strength and compassion. And thus, the tale of Luciel came to its close. So don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell for more stories, and if you enjoyed this anime, share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, farewell.